Back in August I made a video where I reviewed 6 small free-to-play games that, due to their size, couldn't really constitute videos of their own, so I combined them into one video for the sake of convenience, and just so I could make a longer video. I managed to get 17.5 minutes of that last one, which was a lot longer than I thought it would be. In that video I mentioned that I decided to make this into a series, where with each episode, yes I'm still calling them episodes, I pick 6 random games from a list of free-to-play games I've collated and write a short review for each. These reviews aren't quite the same as my usual stuff. I do a quick overview of what the game is and what it contains, then I go over what I liked and what I disliked, finally concluding with what I would have liked to have seen changed, and just what I thought of it overall. No numerical rating attached, just my thoughts. For those wondering, all of these games are on Steam. I'll have links for them in the description below, and they were all found using Steam's Discovery Queue feature. If you haven't already, I highly suggest you check this thing out. It gives you a selection of 12 games every time you use it, and I found lots of really good games thanks to this thing. I have to say, the games I've chosen for this one definitely stand out a lot more than the last ones. Don't get me wrong, the last ones were good, I just think these are much stronger entries. The links to them can be found in the description below. But with all that said, let's get to it. The Rabbit Scroll is a 2D vertical platformer that has you playing as a hand-drawn rabbit jumping from platform to platform in a similarly hand-drawn world. Your goal is to simply reach the top of the level, making sure not to fall off any edges in the process. There isn't really a great deal I can say about this game given just how small it is. In fact, I was actually able to complete it in about 5 minutes, but those 5 minutes were filled with a lot of charm and a decent amount of challenge. First things first though, the gameplay. In addition to jumping, you are also able to run up walls and dash through the air to cover greater distances. Some parts of the levels will require you to make quick use of these 2 abilities, making the pace of the game varied enough to keep you on edge. Then you have the different platform types which add more layers to the challenge. You have the crumbling platforms that begin to fall apart when you land on them, then there are the clouds which essentially serve as jump pads, allowing you to reach previously unreachable heights. The best sequences of the game, however, are the ones where you're being chased. There are a couple of instances where a dark fog appears, which begins to slowly rise. If caught in the fog, you are forced to start the level from the beginning. In all honesty, I wish this was present in all of the levels, as it provides much more danger and emphasis on reaching the top. One of my favourite aspects of the Rabbit Scroll was the art style. As the name may imply, the visual presentation is inspired by the artwork you would find on old Chinese scrolls, and the final result is very attractive. Even the way they've incorporated the platforms and the character animations feels genuine and well thought out. Overall, it may be incredibly short, but I enjoyed my time with it. It's not groundbreaking, but it's a cute, charming experience that's worth trying out. The Looker is a first-person puzzle game that takes place in a small castle. I didn't actually know this when I first started, but the game is a parody of a similar product called The Witness, so I was very confused at the beginning as to how anything worked. Nevertheless, the puzzles here are quite familiar to those from The Witness, only these are a bit more literal. For those who don't know, to solve a puzzle in The Witness, you need to drag the line from one point to another, and the paths you need to take become more complex as you progress. In The Looker, you're given a pen, and with it, you draw a line from the start point to the end point. I know it's not very subtle, but it works just as well, and the game finds interesting and equally amusing ways to vary the challenge, and you're expected to think outside of the box just as much as you would in The Witness. The map is small, but you're not given access to all of its locations from the get-go, so there is a defined sense of progression, as you're expected to interact with every drawn screen you can find. It never becomes monotonous though. The game finds new ways to present its challenges, whether it's through arcade games, doing a specific painting, or wandering through a garden maze. It's continuously engaging from start to finish. As I briefly mentioned before, The Looker is an amusing experience, and this isn't just shown in its gameplay, but it's also highlighted in the various voice recordings scattered around the map. They have absolutely no reason to be there, but they're really funny, and they add to an already charming package.
Through many births, I have wandered on and on, searching for, but never finding, a better deal than 0% APR on certified pre-owned vehicles. For trucks tougher than a drunk Marine, come to Mike's Pre-Owned, where we do the things that get things done.
Despite following the same style as The Witness, the visuals here really are gorgeous. Low poly yet highly detailed models combined with bright, vibrant colours work effectively with each other, which just made the game all the more appealing to me. I wasn't sure what to think about this when I initially started it, but it quickly grew into being one of the best free-to-play games I've ever played. There isn't really anything negative I could say about it. If you're looking for a light-hearted and engaging puzzle game, this one should definitely be on your radar. Hex Rally Racers is a third-person racing game featuring a band of magic-wielding witches who, instead of using cars to race against each other, they use their broomsticks instead to fly through the tracks. Right from the beginning, you are given 8 characters to choose from, and although they don't have their own unique gameplay characteristics, their appearances do much to distinguish them apart from each other. They also do this really high-pitched noise that becomes very irritating very quickly. Then you have classes. These are the things that come with their own stats, and you are given 4 to choose from: speed, defense, offense, and chaos. They also come with their own set of power-ups to be obtained when racing, 4 per class, though some classes reuse certain power-ups, which I thought was a bit disappointing. Still, the classes are distinct enough and they all have their own pros and cons. The power-ups in question range from utility items such as speed boosts to more offensive and defensive tools such as fireballs and shields. Which item you get depends on the colour of its container, and what item you get from each colour corresponds to the class you choose. It's a predictable system, but it works well, and all of the power-ups are fun to use. As for the driving, or flying, most of the time it's great. It has the floaty feeling that you would expect without it becoming difficult to control, and for the most part it's smooth. It is a bit buggy though, and that's mainly due to the wonky collision. You'll usually notice it when you collide with another racer, or with a projectile. Sometimes your character just goes completely ballistic. The game contains 6 racetracks divided into 2 Grand Prix Cups. They all have a medieval fantasy theme, but they each take place in a different environment, and they're beautiful to look at. Likewise, they succeed from a design point of view. Not a single one has a poor layout or feels like a chore to race through. It doesn't have a large amount of content, but what's there will occupy you for a decent amount of time, and at the very least will provide you with a substantial amount of entertainment. It would be cool to see the developers expand on this, to be honest, though I'm only saying that since I'm a big fan of these types of games. Easy recommend. Cyrah's Ascent, Cyrah, is a third-person action game that has you fight against a horde of monsters who have laid claim to a tall mountain. Using your magical abilities, you are tasked with defeating these creatures and driving them away from the land. There isn't really a narrative here, so this is just something that I've assumed based on what's presented. As you might have picked up by looking at the footage, this is a very action-oriented game, and you'll often find yourself engaged in confrontations. The combat is split between melee attacks and spells, which, when used together effectively, can make you into a force to be reckoned with. Altogether you have 4 spells to choose from: Explosive Orbs, which damage enemies in a radius and can also destroy parts of the environment; Javelins, which are more precise projectiles that deal great damage; Flame, which burns enemies within a short distance; and lastly Heal, which allows you to increase your health. Each of these come with their own situational benefits, so you're expected to switch between them frequently, making it a pretty fast-paced game overall. Likewise, you're kept on your toes due to the aggressiveness of the enemies. Luckily, your character can also dash, something that can be used in both traversal and combat, so getting out of harm's way is relatively simple. In some ways, this game reminded me of God of War, both in a visual and mechanical sense. I have no idea if this was intentional or not, but I couldn't help but notice it. Something about the setting and the ferocity of the combat do provide a few familiar inklings. My only major complaint is that some of the hitboxes feel off, especially with the enemies that protrude from the walls, as these were pretty difficult to hit sometimes. I also felt that some of the melee attacks took too long, making it tricky to avoid taking damage. Overall though, I was pretty pleased with Cyrah's Ascent. It's a very dramatic game that has a lot going on, while at the same time remaining both smooth and fun to play. It's quite short, I finished it in about 20 minutes, but what's there is quite fulfilling. A series of Temporal Mishaps is a first-person platformer that sees you playing as a time traveller journeying through time with, you guessed it, a time machine. The game goes with an amusing approach, however, in that every time you go somewhere, something breaks off the machine, so you have to go exploring for the broken part in order to continue travelling. Altogether, there are 4 locations to travel to, starting with the Jurassic period, followed by ancient Egypt, then the Dark Ages, finally concluding with the future. The levels are interesting enough, if a little barren in some parts. Some places are more memorable than others, but at the very least they're all distinct. One aspect I liked was how each environment had its own unique elements. For example, the Jurassic period contains platforms that fall when you step on them, and the futuristic period has jump jets that shoot you up into the sky. They also contain points of interest which tell you a bit more about the time period you're currently in. For some, they give you facts about different areas, whereas others contain written texts, providing a small amount of world building, which adds a bit of character to the levels. Unfortunately, the movement can be awkward to work with sometimes. It's very slippery and the jumping can sometimes feel like dashing since it is difficult to control. It's really bad on the future level, where it can end up being very difficult to navigate. There isn't really much more I can say about this game, to be honest. It's basic, which isn't an inherently bad thing in any respect, but once you've completed the first level, it doesn't change much afterwards, aside from the small amount of unique environment elements, such as the platforms that I mentioned earlier. Despite its simplicity, I still enjoyed it. Since writing this, a 5th level has actually been released, with more levels down the line, so I might come back to it at a future date. It'll be interesting to see what new things the developers have come up with. The Odyssey of the Mammoth is a third-person, top-down adventure game that has you play as a mother mammoth guiding her child as they migrate to a more suitable environment during a time where the mammoths were beginning to die out. Despite having a dark concept, the story is told with a whiff of humour by a comical narrator who serves as a much welcome contrast. He is easily one of the most memorable aspects of the whole experience, and the voice actor who plays him does a really good performance.
Well, I'm not having it. Someone has to tell those mammoths how things really are. It's a cruel and unfair world, and the story is one that is bound to end up in tragedy. They are slaves to history and the torrential passage of time. And they really gotta get out of this place. I mean, it's trying to kill them every few seconds. No, but like, for real, what is this? This is crazy.
It doesn't take long to notice just how stunning the environments are. Altogether, there are 3 levels containing a variety of locations that are full to the brim with detail. Ironically, the lush, greener areas are more hazardous to the mammoths due to them not being adapted to that sort of environment, something that the game makes a notable point on. A lot of the time you spend in Odyssey of the Mammoth is dedicated to navigating these landscapes, and while there is a lot to see, there isn't much complexity to them. In the grand scheme of things, you are just walking from point A to point B. This, however, is interrupted frequently with interspersed combat sections. As well as trying to survive against the changing climate, you must also repel against the various groups of humans hunting you down. Although you are more than capable of fighting, you are able to swing your tusks as well as charging forward or slamming the ground, sending hunters flying. Your baby mammoth is not as capable, which is something you have to keep in mind when fighting. All the baby can do is respond to your commands on where to go. While I did enjoy the combat, it doesn't really change at all, and when I said that the combat encounters were frequent, I should have specified that they more or less occur every 50 meters or so. It begins to get stale relatively quickly, and the game lasts for about 45 minutes in total. The narrator tries his best to keep it feeling refreshing, but ultimately it's not enough. I'll conclude this by saying that the Odyssey of the Mammoth contains a really great message about a highly intriguing piece of history. This is what it set out to do, and I think it has more than achieved it. As a game, it would have been nice to have had more variety in mechanics and general complexity, but what's there is still good enough. It's just repetitive. And that's it for episode 2. What did you think of these? I would love to hear all of your thoughts in the comments below. Likewise, if you have any feedback to share on the video itself, or just the series in general, I would appreciate any constructive comments you have. Like I said in the beginning, the links to all of these games can be found in the description below. I highly suggest trying some of these out, so you can see for yourself just how much hard work has gone into making each and every one of them. Games development isn't an easy thing. I should know, I've been studying it for the past 6 years. Releasing high quality games such as these for free says a lot about the people who make them. They're all made with passion and dedication, and they deserve more spotlight, so why not give them a go? Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to check out episode 1 of this series. I plan on making more of these, so if that's something you're interested in, then be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. I usually make reviews for indie games, but I have a few other videos in the works that branch out from this field, and I'm very much looking forward to finishing them. Until then, stay safe and I'll see you next time. Bye.